Although anything can happen in arm wrestling, and Denis might totally surprise me on match day, as of now, I think Denis probably has only one chance of winning this match against Devin. One technique that will be crucial for him. I think Denis needs to take a page out of the book of the undisputed greatest technical arm wrestler in history, Uncle Todd. In all seriousness, Todd Hutchings does get a bad rap for not having the greatest technique, but in reality, he's a lot more technical than people think. Uncle Todd developed a strategy that works for him based upon his strengths and weaknesses, and it has proved to be very effective. This technique became known as the Todd roll. The Todd roll is essentially a top roll without needing your wrist flexion. Instead of holding onto your opponent with your fingers, you simply let go and allow the strap to hold on for you. You drive back and sideways as hard as possible. Both you and your opponent lose your wrist, and you're left with a position where you can attack your opponent's bicep with your side pressure. And interestingly enough, this technique has historically worked quite well against Devin Larratt. Here we see Todd Hutchings against Devin at WAL. This round is quite controversial, as many people hold this round to be a pin, and it well may have been a pin, but it almost certainly would have been a pin at East vs West with the lower pin pads. If Todd Hutchings was able to Todd roll the Devin of 2018, perhaps Denis Cyplenkov can Todd roll the Devin of 2023. We also saw John Brzezinski have quite a lot of success against Devin Larratt at King of the Table, also using a Todd rollish technique. Although John was unable to pin Devin, he did get him right next to the pin pad. Later on, Devin said he thinks John might have been able to pin him if he tried to bring his shoulder forward and flop press from there. And as we know, Denis does have a pretty solid flop press. He can transition to that press from his Todd roll. So even if Denis does end up finishing the match in a flop press, I think his key to success initially will be the Todd roll. He has to first be willing to allow his wrist to flop back and let the strap hold on for him. Then he will gain much more access to Devin's bicep than he would have if he tried to keep his wrist flat or keep it bent. From here, Denis can open the bicep of Devin and transition to a flop press if he needs to. That being said, Denis doesn't necessarily need to be offensive in all moments, just like Uncle Todd. Denis can still pull through his thumb with his wrist back from a defensive position and gain access to his King's move, forcing Devin to go on the offensive and waste energy trying to climb and adjust. Whether it is more offensive or defensive in a given moment, I think the Todd roll will be key for Denis in this match. If Denis goes into this match attempting to bend his wrist or keep it flat, I think he's going to be in for a long night. The odds that Denis can bend his wrist against Devin Larratt, who cracked Ermi's wrist back like nothing, when Denis himself struggled to keep his wrist less than a year ago against John, I think are incredibly low. Sometimes in arm wrestling, giving things away can actually lead you to a victory. And in this match, I think Denis needs to give his wrist away. By giving his wrist away, Denis will gain access to Devin's weakness, which is his arm. But if Denis tries to bend his wrist, he will be attacking Devin's biggest strength by far, his pronation. Oftentimes, it is much more effective to attack your opponent's weakness, even if it means pulling from a suboptimal position yourself, rather than being overly committed to a strong position yourself and trying to attack your opponent's strength. All that being said, I think Denis is well aware of everything I've said in this video. I'm guessing that Denis is planning on his wrist going back during this match, just like it has in pretty much every close battle he's ever had. Denis is by no means new to pulling from a less than ideal position, and it may prove to be an extremely valuable ability against Devin this weekend. But let me know what you guys think about Denis's win condition. Do you think that Denis will be forced to use a Todd roll, meaning he will need to be comfortable with pulling without his wrist? Or do you see potential for Denis keeping his wrist in this match?